First, I'd like to just mention about the partnership that Arkansas Farm Bureau has with the university system, and it's been a long-lasting and successful relationship. And I appreciate the university at all levels, from the county agents to the experiment stations and the colleges, and the work that we do from a policy organization and then through the education that they provide Arkansas agriculture. So I appreciate that. First of all, thanks for having me, and I know I would like to say that I'm going to bring good news to all the producers and say that you're going to have a safety net program similar to what you've had in the past, but I'm afraid I may be delivering some bad news to some. I would say that the Farm Bill is being discussed and debated in Congress currently. It expires, the 2008 bill will expire, as many of you all know, September the 30th, and that is fast approaching. When you look at the legislative days, there's only 10 legislative days until the August recess, where Congress will be out the month of August. They'll come back in September, and most members then will have campaigning on their minds, and in my opinion, very little things will get done between September and November. So probably are looking for a short-term extension, because I do not believe we will have a farm bill before September the 30th. Kind of where Arkansas Farm Bureau has been in a policy positions towards the farm bill. We've had many discussions throughout our county leaders up and down through and across the state about where we're going to be. With the federal deficit the way it is, it's been clear by all of our members, we feel like proportionate cuts straight across the board with all of our government programs, in our mind, would be the best approach. Even on the commodities, nutrition, everybody, if it takes 5%, 6% straight across the board, that would be the best scenario. That's not what's going to happen. Then we looked at the commodity programs. Everybody talks about the elimination of direct payments, and that's really made the news and really got the momentum going to eliminate direct payments, in my opinion, when the National Cotton Council come out in their positions and said they're going a different direction into the STAX program, which is a crop insurance product. Then you had Rice following them with the elimination of direct payments. American Farm Bureau did. And I will contend that Arkansas Farm Bureau was probably one of the last organizations to stand up and say, listen, direct payments, one, they're WTO compliant, they're a green box payment, they've supported Arkansas agriculture, and our guys like them, and they would like to see them maintained. Also, we looked around for a champion in Congress, and Frank Lucas, the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, was also there with us stating that position. But unfortunately, one, we didn't have any other organizations helping us, and then we couldn't find any other friends really in Congress that would really go onto the line, put their self out there of support of direct payments. So then we started looking around at other programs, and I would give a shout out to the university for sure, Eric Wells and the other economists in the system, that when these proposals come out, they do analysis, they're quick and extremely knowledgeable about the effects that any of those programs will have in Arkansas agriculture, so we rely on them heavily. We got to looking, and a lot of people wanted to go just strictly to crop insurance, and these are other organizations, especially corn and soybeans up in the Midwest. And you know, the needs of a Midwestern corn farmer is different than a Mississippi Delta rice producer. So we feel like at Farm Bureau that any type of safety net program, it has to be fair to all commodities in all regions. And in any interview or meeting that I have with the delegation, that is the number one statement that we will say. A one-size-fits-all just does not work. Our policies also are maintaining the marketing loan programs. We'd like to see increased loan rates, but I don't believe that's going to happen. The moving into the conservation programs, Farm Bureau's policy is maintain funding of the EQIP program, and if any cuts to conservation programs, it should be out of the working land programs, retirement land programs. The working land program should be maintained at current funding. So looking there at Congress, I think it's pretty telling when you look up at the makeup of the different ag committees. I believe that tells us a lot of what's going on and the direction of their proposals have went. The Senate Ag Committee, of course, they're made up of 21 members. The chairman, Debbie Stabenow from Michigan, and the ranking member from Kansas. When you look at that committee, there's 6 former chairmen or ranking members, so there's a lot of expertise in the Farm Bill. 4 chairmen of other committees. You've got 2 powerful committee chairmen sits on the Senate Ag Committee. Kent Conrad is the budget chairman and Max Baucus is the finance chairman. There's only 4 Southern senators that sits on the committee. And then when you look at the states that have both of their senators there, you've got Nebraska, North Dakota, and Iowa, all of which grows a totally different crop mix than what we do here in the South. I think that's telling with the direction of the Senate win in foreign policy. Then you move over to the House Ag Committee. We do have a Southern chairman, Frank Lucas from Oklahoma, and then a ranking member from Minnesota, Colin Peterson, but he does have a love for duck hunting, and he for sure wants to see rice grown here in Arkansas because he does enjoy coming down here, and Marion Berry and Mike Ross has fostered that relationship of bringing Colin Peterson down here, which for sure is a benefit to Arkansas agriculture. Then you kind of look at the committee members. There's 23 new freshmen on the House Ag Committee. So when Frank Lucas and Peterson went to this Congress, they knew they had to do some education for those members. So that's exactly what they did. The makeup of the new ones are 16 Republicans, 7 Democrats. I think it's telling when you look at the 16 Republicans, they came to Washington, D.C. to do one thing, and that's reduce federal spending. And then you look at the mix-up there, we've got 16 Southerners on the House Ag Committee as well. So where do we stand today? The Senate's passed their bill through the Senate Ag Committee, and it's went through the Senate floor. It cut $23 billion off the budget of the Farm Bill. We didn't feel like that we couldn't support the Senate's version. It was a one-size-fits-all type approach, but what we did want them to do is go first. The House leadership, they had made it perfectly clear they was not going to discuss the Farm Bill until the Senate acted. So it was important that Debbie Stabenow and Ranking Member Roberts got their bill through committee and off the Senate floor, and that's exactly what happened. Then the House passed, I was in D.C. last week, the House passed their bill out last week on a bipartisan effort. And as you all know, watching the news, very little things happen on a bipartisan basis there in D.C. So that particular bill cut $35 billion, but it did, in our opinion, support all commodities in all regions, and I'll discuss a little bit whenever I compare the two here in a second. So looking at the 2 versions now that we have in place, there's 2 titles, the commodity title and nutrition, are miles apart in my opinion. The other titles are fairly close when you look at energy, forestry, conservation, and the other programs. The nutrition title, for instance, in the Senate reduced spending of $4 billion. In the House, it reduced $16 billion. I tell you all that of remembering I said the 16 Republican members on the House Ag Committee, they would have liked to seen that $16 billion go as high as $34 billion. Then on the other side of the aisle, some of the Democrats from New York and other metropolitan areas, they didn't want to see not one penny cut out of nutrition. So there was a lot of maneuvering there through the committee process. Chairman Stabenow said last week that if that number increased to up to $34 billion, there was no way they could come to an agreement during the conference report, so then the discussions would have really derailed there. So it was important that Frank Lucas worked with his members on his side, and Peterson worked with his to defend off some of those amendments that would mess with that number. Because Stabenow did say the 16 and 4, they could work with that to come to a compromise. There was also a letter that was circulated last week that some of our members, would think about doing, and that's splitting out nutrition from the Farm Bill. As an organization, we would oppose that. And the reason being is you'd never pass a commodity title or a Farm Bill without nutrition. You just don't have the votes there. And it was interesting listening to Chairman Lucas last week at a meeting I was attended, because he talked to just about that there was an Oklahoma congressman back in the 70s, saw ag moving away, being reduced, the numbers in Congress, their constituents moving more to urbans. And if we think about it, farmers are about 2% of the population. We're multi-generations away from production agriculture. So it's important that we have that aspect. So that congressman back in the 70s pulled nutrition in to the Farm Bill basically to buy votes, and that's what you do up there to get stuff passed. Even though nutrition has grown to be 77% of all the spending within the Farm Bill. Then we look at the commodity title. You know, there's a lot of similarities between the Senate and the House until you get to the safety net programs. Both versions maintain a strong marketing loan, which we would support. Both versions eliminate direct payments. They eliminate your counter-cyclical programs, the acre, which is not a program that really benefits the South anyway, as well as then they eliminate the SURE, which really hadn't worked, and that's the permanent disaster programs. The Senate kind of went to a one-size-fits-all approach, like I mentioned earlier. It's what they call ARC, A-R-C. That is the average risk coverage. It's real similar to the acre program, but it does give a farmer the ability to choose between a farm level coverage or a county level coverage, whatever works out on their operation. But it is an actual loss. It's a shallow loss program, and it is calculated using an Olympic average of the previous 5 crop years, and it is also on planted acres too. Then on the House side, they also provided a choice, but their choice was between a price support program and a revenue program. So when you go in, you could either choose the price loss coverage, which is extremely similar to the counter-cyclical program, or the revenue loss coverage. The revenue loss follows in line with what the Senate did in the ARC, except it did not provide you a choice of farm level or county level. It stuck it at county level just because it got too expensive. They needed more of the money to pay for the price loss coverage, which we have been asking for, because we feel like with all the irrigated acres we have in Arkansas agriculture that we need protection on price risk and not yield risk. So with that, the price loss coverage is a target price program. It's a reference price. For instance, rice is a $14 reference price. It's paid on 85% of your planted acres, so up to your base acres. You also have the opportunity there to update your yields from 2008 to 2012. You have an opportunity there to update your yields. The Senate version on payment limits, set payment limits at $75,000 on ARC. The House did $125,000 on your price loss or your revenue loss. AGI is set at $750,000 on the Senate, $950,000 on the House. The House, we really appreciated Chairman Lucas attaching some regulatory relief, and I think this is something that many of you all would welcome as well, and that's including the House Bill 872, which may not mean anything to y'all as a number, but it's the bill that amends FIFRA and the Clean Water Act to conclusively declare that under both laws, no permit is required for the labeled use of any pesticides. The federal government has never required a farmer to apply for a clean water permit to apply pesticides. This bill will instruct the EPA and the courts that Congress did not intend, nor will they intend, a farmer to be required to apply for a clean water permit before you apply crop protectants. That particular bill has already passed the Ag Committee on the House and the House floor and the Senate Ag Committee, but it's held up in the Senate on a procedural move that some senators can put a hold on it. So that bill is dead until that senator releases the hold. So the Ag Committee has jurisdiction over 872 as well as the Farm Bill, so we felt like that it was a great move by Chairman Lucas and Ranking Member Peterson to attach that to the overall bill. So all in all, we think that Arkansas agriculture benefits a lot better with the House approach of the commodity title than the one-size-fits-all Senate version. So what's next? When will a farm bill be passed, and what does the road look like ahead? I would say probably anybody's guess is probably as good as another one. But I would say that the ball is now in the House leadership's court. It is, in my opinion, that's a little scary because Speaker John Boehner from Ohio, he's never liked the farm bill. He doesn't like price supports. He's a free market guy. I'm not sure how many farm bills he's ever voted for in Congress. So it's a little scary as the road ahead. And he also, when you really look at the politics of it and some of these tough campaigns throughout this country and the distance or the lack of production agriculture, but the lack of farmers throughout the country with being less than 2%, then he doesn't want a lot of his freshmen to have those tough votes either. So when you just really get down to looking at the politics of it. But there is some pressure being applied now. There's some a congressman, a Republican and Democrat, circulating a letter which we're supportive of and asking our members to sign on to, asking the House leadership to move forward, get the process done before September the 30th. Also, there's commodity organizations doing just that, sending letters to their delegation, sending letters to the House leadership, asking members on the Senate side to work with Speaker Boehner and explain how important it is that we get some certainty in agriculture. So, it could be that the Speaker brings it up on the floor like the traditional way it would happen, but it's, in my opinion right now, it's kind of shaping up more to follow in line with what the transportation bill did. And it passed the Senate floor just like the Farm Bill did, but in the House it passed committee, and then they used a procedural move to use the Rules Committee to negotiate the committee bill with the Senate's version and then pass basically a conference bill. So then they wouldn't have that bill fall onto the House floor with a number of amendments. Personally, I think that's probably the best for Arkansas agriculture, because then that way we wouldn't have to fight some of the amendments that we got killed on the Senate side. That's tougher payment limits, that's lower AGI, and then that's changing some of the reference price, some of the cuts to nutrition or lack of cuts, getting that margin wider so we can't come to an agreement by the end of the year. So if I had a crystal ball and I had to guess, right now we'd probably have a farm bill after the election sometime before Christmas. So I do think we're going to have a farm bill. Some people says we're going to have an extension. I do not think an extension is the way to go, because, and the reason I say that is, with an extension, I don't feel any certainty that we're going to have direct payments and the counter-cyclical programs. They're going to cut. They're going to reduce spending. So if they extend and cut our direct payments, then you have less of a baseline going forward. So if you eliminate direct payments and then we discuss the Farm Bill next year, they're still going to get their $23 to $35 billion in reduction, but you're going to start at a lesser starting point than you have today. So with that, I hope I've kind of gave you some insight, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.